The Buffalo Bills offseason took a dramatic and unexpected turn, and the shockwaves from this decision are still rippling through the entire organization and the fan base. The firing of Sean McDermott marks one of the most defining moments in recent franchise history, not simply because a head coach was dismissed, but because of what that decision represents about where the Bills believe they are right now and where they refuse to settle. This was not a move made out of panic or emotion. This was a calculated, aggressive statement that the Buffalo Bills are no longer willing to accept coming close as good enough. For years, McDermott symbolized stability. He helped pull the franchise out of irrelevance, restored credibility, and turned Buffalo into a perennial playoff team. That foundation matters, and it will always be part of his legacy. But the modern NFL does not reward comfort. It rewards boldness, timing, and urgency, especially when a franchise quarterback is in his prime. The Bills looked at their recent postseason history and saw a pattern that could no longer be ignored. Close losses, fourth-quarter collapses, missed opportunities, and seasons ending the same way. Despite different rosters and circumstances, at some point, continuity stops being a strength and starts becoming a ceiling. Josh Allen's presence changes everything. When you have a quarterback of his caliber, patience becomes a risk. Every season is precious, and every year that ends without a deep playoff run feels heavier than the last. The organization understands that Allen is still elite, still evolving, and still capable of carrying a team to the highest level. But they also understand that the margin for error shrinks with each passing year. The decision to move on from McDermott reflects a belief that the team needed a different voice, a different vision, and perhaps a different philosophical approach to maximize the most important asset in the building. What makes this move even more striking is that it did not come with a full reset. The front office remains intact, signaling that the Bills are not tearing everything down. Instead, they are attempting to recalibrate. This suggests internal belief that the roster, at its core, is strong enough to contend immediately. And that coaching direction was the missing piece. That distinction matters, because it frames this firing not as an admission of failure, but as a refusal to waste time. Looking back at the last several playoff exits only sharpens the context. Games that slipped away late, leads that could not be protected, moments where execution faltered when precision was required most. These were not isolated incidents. They became recurring themes, and in the NFL, repetition invites scrutiny, fair or not. The head coach ultimately bears the weight of those moments. The Bills were competitive, but competition without progression eventually loses its shine. Now the franchise enters a phase filled with uncertainty and opportunity in equal measure. A head coaching search always brings risk. There is no guarantee that the next hire will be better, only the hope that it will be different in the right ways. The Bills must decide what identity they want to embrace moving forward. Do they lean fully into an offensive-minded leader who can unlock even more from Allen and dictate games with aggression? Or do they seek a balanced approach that maintains defensive structure while modernizing situational decision-making? Either way, the choice will define the next chapter of this era. There are also immediate ripple effects throughout the coaching staff. When a head coach is dismissed, nothing exists in a vacuum. Coordinators become candidates elsewhere. Assistants face uncertain futures. Schemes that once made sense may no longer align with the vision of the next leader. Personnel decisions suddenly take on new meaning. Because players were acquired and developed for a specific system, transition always comes with friction. And how the Bills manage that transition will determine whether this bold move accelerates success or complicates it. Despite the chaos, Buffalo remains one of the most attractive destinations in the league. That matters more than ever. During a crowded hiring cycle, coaches dream of stability, talent, and a quarterback who can elevate everything around him. Few openings offer that combination as clearly as Buffalo does. The chance to work with Josh Allen alone will draw serious interest, and the Bills know it. This is not a rebuilding job. This is a contending job, with expectations that will be immediate and unforgiving. The pressure will be immense from day one. Whoever steps into this role will inherit a locker room that believes it can win now, a fan base that demands results, and a front office that has already shown it will not hesitate to make difficult decisions. There will be no grace period built on promises alone. Progress will be measured in January, not September. And anything less than a legitimate championship push will be scrutinized heavily. As the offseason unfolds, speculation will dominate every conversation. Names will circulate. Philosophies will be debated. and every rumor will feel amplified by the magnitude of the decision that started it all. Yet, beneath all of it lies a simple truth: the Buffalo Bills chose urgency over comfort. They chose potential over familiarity. They chose to bet on the idea that standing still was more dangerous than taking a leap. The aftermath of this decision is already reshaping how the Buffalo Bills are viewed across the league, and the coming weeks promise to be some of the most consequential in recent memory. When a team at this stage of contention changes leadership, every assumption gets challenged. Long-standing ideas about scheme, culture, and roster construction are suddenly open for debate, and that sense of instability can either fracture a locker room or energize it. Much depends on how clearly the organization communicates its vision and how decisively it acts. While the spotlight is at its brightest, one of the most delicate aspects of this transition revolves around the roster itself. Over multiple seasons, players were selected, developed, and deployed to fit a specific defensive identity. That identity emphasized discipline, zone awareness, and structure over chaos. A new head coach may value very different traits, and that creates tension between continuity and evolution. The Bills now face a critical evaluation period, where they must decide whether to adapt the scheme to the players they have, or reshape the roster to match the philosophy they want. Either choice carries consequences, especially under the constraints of the salary cap. On the offensive side of the ball, the conversation feels even more urgent. Josh Allen has continued to mature, refining his decision-making and expanding his understanding of situational football. The right coaching staff could elevate that growth into something even more dangerous for opposing defenses. Creativity, adaptability, and trust will be central themes going forward. The Bills do not need to reinvent their offense, but they do need someone capable of pressing advantages relentlessly and responding faster when games begin to tilt in uncomfortable directions. This transition also places immense pressure on leadership within the locker room. Veteran players who have experienced both the highs and the disappointments of recent seasons will now be asked to stabilize the environment. Change can breed uncertainty, but it can also reignite belief. If players sense that the organization shares their hunger, the message must be clear that this move was made in service of winning now, not rebuilding later. That distinction will matter when emotions run high and questions linger without immediate answers. Around the league, the perception of Buffalo remains powerful. This is still a team viewed as one of the elite contenders when talent is assessed honestly. That perception works in the Bills' favor during a head coaching search, but it also raises expectations before a single snap is played. Any new coach stepping into this role will be expected to contend immediately, not gradually. The luxury of time rarely exists for teams with championship-level rosters, and Buffalo is firmly in that category. The coming offseason will test the organization's alignment from top to bottom. Draft strategy, free agency priorities, and internal promotions will all signal what kind of football the Bills want to play next. Fans will read deeply into every move, every comment, and every hire, searching for clues about whether this shift represents true evolution or simply a reshuffling of familiar ideas. The margin for missteps feels thinner than ever emotionally. This moment is complicated. Gratitude and frustration coexist. Respect for what was built does not erase the disappointment of how it ended. That tension lives within the fan base and the building itself, yet professional sports rarely allow room for sentimentality when championships are within reach. The Bills made it clear that recent outcomes no longer align with their ambitions. And that clarity, however painful, is often the starting point for transformation. As the dust continues to settle, one reality remains undeniable: Buffalo is all in. This franchise is not waiting for the future to arrive, it is actively chasing it. Willing to accept uncertainty in exchange for possibility, the next phase will be defined by choices made under pressure, by leadership tested before trust is fully established, and by a relentless focus on maximizing a window that will not stay open forever. As this process unfolds, the weight of expectation will only grow heavier, especially as every decision begins to shape the identity of the next era. Training facilities, meeting rooms, and front offices are no longer places of routine, but spaces of evaluation and urgency. Players are watching closely, not just for who is hired, but for how the organization responds to adversity and change. The tone set now will echo well into the season, influencing preparation, confidence, and belief long before the first kickoff. Josh Allen sits at the center of all of it, not just as the quarterback, but as the emotional engine of the team. His competitiveness, resilience, and leadership will be tested in new ways. During this transition, a new coaching staff must earn his trust while also challenging him to reach another level. That balance is delicate but essential. When it works, it can unlock an offense that dictates terms rather than reacts to them, especially in the moments that have historically defined Buffalo's heartbreak. The defensive side faces its own crossroads. Years of familiarity created comfort, but comfort does not always translate to dominance when opponents adjust. The next vision for this unit will need to honor the intelligence and discipline of the players, while injecting adaptability and situational sharpness, late-game execution, communication under pressure, and flexibility against elite offenses will be under a microscope. The Bills know that championship defenses are not just talented, but responsive and resilient externally. The conversation around Buffalo will remain loud and relentless. Every rumor, every interview, every reported meeting will be dissected as if it were a play call on third down. That noise can be distracting, but it also reflects relevance. Teams that matter are talked about constantly, and Buffalo remains firmly in that space. The challenge is filtering that attention into motivation rather than pressure internally. This period demands unity. Change often reveals fractures if alignment is weak, but it can also strengthen bonds when everyone understands the goal. Veterans and young players alike will need reassurance that this shift is purposeful, that it is designed to push the team forward rather than reset it backward. Trust between players and leadership will not be built overnight, but it begins with consistency in messaging and action. What comes next will not be defined by headlines alone, but by how the Bills prepare, adapt, and respond once the uncertainty gives way to direction. This is a moment suspended between what was and what could be, charged with possibility and risk. The decisions made now will shape how this team competes when the games matter most, and the urgency driving those decisions shows no sign of slowing down. Before we dive back in, make sure to hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. Your support helps us keep delivering the latest Buffalo Bills updates straight to your screen. And hey, don't hold back. Let us know your thoughts on today's news down in the comments. Whispers around the Bills' locker room have grown louder after a tense internal episode that may have permanently changed the depth chart, according to people close to the situation. Head coach Sean McDermott is pushing for the exit of a starting player following a heated altercation that reportedly crossed a line. The phrase circulating in the hallways is blunt and final: he won't come back anymore. Whether that is emotion talking or a definitive stance, it has fueled speculation across the league. The incident is said to have happened away from the cameras, but its ripple effects were impossible to ignore. Sources describe a confrontation that escalated quickly, involving raised voices, clashing egos, and a breakdown of trust that coaching staff found unacceptable. McDermott, known publicly for preaching accountability, discipline, and unity, is believed to have taken the situation personally. Insiders suggest he views the episode not as a momentary lapse, but as a challenge to the culture he has worked to build. What makes the rumor more intriguing is the status of the player involved. This was not a fringe name or a depth piece fighting for snaps, but a regular starter with a defined role. Removing such a figure would be a bold move, one that could reshape rotations and force difficult decisions in a competitive environment. Yet those familiar with McDermott's leadership style insist that reputation and past contributions do not outweigh standards. Front office executives are said to be monitoring the fallout closely. While no official transaction has been announced, the internal message appears clear: certain behaviors will not be tolerated. Regardless of talent, around the league, rival teams are already paying attention, wondering whether a sudden availability could emerge from Buffalo. For now, the Bills remain publicly silent, choosing restraint over confirmation. Still, the rumor refuses to fade. In a sport where cohesion is fragile and authority is constantly tested, this episode may become a defining moment, not just for one player's future, but for how far a coach is willing to go to protect his locker room. That's a wrap for now. If you enjoyed the video and want to stay on top of all things Buffalo Bills, make sure to subscribe and hit that like button. We'd love to hear what you think in the comments. See you in the next update.